All right, welcome to March Office Hours. I'm joined here with Matt and I'm Emma. This is Bulb Digital Office Hours. We do this the first Wednesday of every month, but a little alert for next month. We have spring break coming up, so we're not going to be doing it the first week of April. We're actually going to join all back together on April 10th. So if you have more questions past what we answer right now, or if something comes up between now and then, come join us April 10th. So the gist of Office Hours, if you're new, it's basically a time for us to answer any questions you have about Microsoft 365, modernizing your workplace, anything you're kind of working through within your workplace or your organization is going through change, and you just need a little help or some recommendations on the best way to do it. We'd love to chat or just talk through really anything you need help with. So it doesn't have to just be technical issues or problems that are coming up. It can be something strategic, something as simple as, hey, we're trying to figure out how to get people to do the action items that they say they're going to do in meetings. We have some thoughts on that. So right now you're either seeing us on Teams or on YouTube. So you probably joined one of those two ways. And if you're on YouTube, we just recommend dropping questions into the chat. And if you're on Teams, you can also interact through the chat, but we can actually take you off of mute if you have something you want to discuss a little bit more in depth with us. Sometimes we have questions for you.
Yep.
Yeah. So outside of that, just want to say thanks again for joining us. We're so happy that you're here, and we're excited to hear what you're working through at your organization. So I know we got a couple questions already submitted. One thing we didn't do is we didn't really give our backgrounds at all. Do we want to kind of talk about what we each do?
I mean, sure. So I have a pretty extensive history in development, so custom development, but then also in the Microsoft stack, so implementing solutions from communication collaboration, but then also business process automation. And I, at Bulb, run the communication collaboration area within the group.
Yep. And I'm a delivery lead here, which is kind of a fancy agile word for project manager. But all things task related is kind of in my court, and always making sure that we have everything documented and that we're delivering things on time and to the quality that we've promised.
Yep.
So that's basically me and Matt. And we're, like I said, open to any types of questions. If we don't know the answer, we're going to talk to our team and figure it out and get something back to you guys. So first up, this was a question submitted from someone who's a consulting project manager. They said, we are entertaining moving over to Microsoft Planner, the new one. Once it is launched, we'll need to build some client-facing project dashboards, track workload across the team in the form of points versus hours, and track project progress from a business unit level. Is this all possible with the new planner, or is it too early to know?
Yeah, so my recommendation on all things Microsoft, the new tools like this, or a revamp of an existing tool, is I would not commit to it until you can see it and you can try it. The reason I say that is because Microsoft does a really good job at covering, 80% of what people want. But that 80% isn't necessarily your percent. So, not knowing enough about what your specific requirements are, I would really suggest waiting till you can get a pre-release version, a preview version, or there's more information about the details. You don't mention where you're coming from. I think that would also help in kind of providing some direction, and what you're hoping to actually get out of that you couldn't get out of the current planner and project for the web, right? Because some of the things you mentioned, client-facing project dashboards, tracking workload across the team. I lost my audio. My ears. Is that okay? I didn't know whether or not anybody else could hear me. Okay. Client-facing dashboards, tracking workload across teams. So some of that stuff is already available in Project for the Web. Is there something of that a feature of that isn't working or wasn't good enough for you to switch? Those are the types of things I would try to focus on trying to figure out. It could also just be a licensing thing, but really understanding that a little bit more. Mitch mentioned before the call talking about his hope that all of this stuff just lives in Dataverse, which is where Project for the Web lives. In which case, you have a lot of ability to customize and do some of the things that you're talking about. But like I said, a lot of that already exists in Project for the Web. And so then I would ask the question, why aren't you currently moving to Project for the Web? There must be a reason. If you have that reason, I don't know for sure whether or not that will change with the new planner. It may not.
And Mitch is sitting with us here in the studio, so I'm going to ask him to put his link to a video he did recently on Planner and, what we're excited about, and even a little bit about the integration with Loop. So anyway, he's got a great video on that. We'll post that in the chat. Check that out. But yeah,
cool.
I agree. You got to kind of know what you're getting yourself into before which, I think this person who submitted this question, they admitted that is it too early to know? And you can't put a lot of weight on that until you actually know what it's going to deliver.
If you're to be really clear, like if you're looking, like let's say that you're currently using one tool, you've considered another tool, and then Microsoft asked, potentially is launching this one, I would definitely wait. I would definitely not switch to a different one
just to
without
switch
knowing.
2 months later.
But I wouldn't commit right now.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we're hopeful. We're optimistic. We'll see what happens. I know on one of our projects we were just talking about this morning, hoping to use the new planner with some of the new features. All right, so that was that question. Second question that we already had submitted. Let's go to this one. This is all about tracking of expiration dates. So what would be your thoughts on the best way to track expiration dates for medical licenses? This is for multiple providers across multiple states. The goal would be for an auto reminder to be sent prior to the expiration date. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one, Matt, because in a previous life, I worked at contractor where we had the same issue where if different subcontractors for us had insurance that was about to expire, we didn't really have an easy way. QuickBooks had something that sometimes can trigger expiration dates, but we never had any answer to it in the Microsoft suite.
So I think there's lots of different ways to do this. This is a fairly simple business process automation kind of thing. The traditional way that would be kind of the easy, cheap, simple way would be create a SharePoint list, enter your data, have a column for the date, have a flow that monitors it once a week, and basically, hey, you're past due, go send a notification, send an email to someone somewhere to do something, right? The more complicated way, like not necessarily complicated, the more pro dev or advanced or robust enterprise level way would be to integrate this into a dynamic or not a dynamic, but a Dataverse instance where you're in Power Automate. Maybe you have an app that would allow you to configure and maintain this data. And then you could do business process automation because maybe this process requires more than just an email to somebody to remind them. Maybe it's, I sent an email to this user to ask them to renew. It sends them a link to our, public-facing portal where they go and upload the document, and that document goes to someone else for approval. They click approve, then it goes to someone else for approval. Then it gets stored and routed to actually update the real data, and then maybe sends email notifications to the person who submitted it throughout the whole process. Like I could make a case that it's much larger. But if you really are just talking about, I need a list of data with providers, dates, and send somebody an email when the dates happen, or create a task when that happens, or create a notice in Teams or something, SharePoint and a Power Automate is probably good enough, easy enough, simple enough,
I think
straightforward enough.
The objective here was really just an auto reminder sent, which I assume is email. So I think that could accomplish that easily. Cool. Stacy, if you're on YouTube or on our Teams message, just let us know if you have any follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, any of the people that we're responding to for the previous questions, if you're on, we'd love to talk. Feel free to let us know. And if you want to come off mute and chat some more, we'd be happy to do that if you're on Teams, or just send us a message with some more questions.
Great. This next question we have is...
Yeah, you want me to summarize it?
Well, I just want to say, good for you, Stacy. You're new to Microsoft Universe, but you're trying to automate already, which is great to see, and you're unlocking the power of it, which is awesome. Okay, this next one, also kind of a newer to Microsoft, the space. It's kind of a long question, so I want to just... give the gist of it a little bit more summarized, but essentially it starts with the fact that this organization's using shared email inboxes, and they need a new solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to it a bit?
So their business problem is really, they've got a bunch of shared mailboxes that's kind of running their business. They have a lot of sites that have forms where people submit things or ask for things. It comes in and they do some process and handle some tasks, and the outcome of those tasks are to maybe respond to them or do something else. And today, that's a very manual process. Somebody's monitoring those mailboxes. Somebody maybe takes something out of the mailbox to go make something happen. And they initially were looking at, well, can I use Copilot to do some of that stuff? And Copilot cannot, get into shared mailboxes in the same way that it can get into your personal mailbox, et cetera. But all of that is really meant to try to make this stuff faster and automate some of these things. And my suggestion, the very specific ask they have as well, should we be creating M365 groups and then, not using regular shared mailboxes? What should we do, right? I think, we've talked about this for a very long time. I hate email. Email is not something that I enjoy. It's not something that I think it works for employees or for businesses. I would get out of the shared mailbox thing altogether. I would not use a Microsoft 365 group. I would not use a shared mailbox. I would actually automate those messages coming in somehow so that you could get them into a task list that would be, or a planner board or something where someone could manage that a little bit better and have a real handoff. I might, if those are real form submissions and if you're not really replying to them from an email box or from that shared mailbox, maybe I would have an app that would allow you to put in some response and then respond back to them. I don't know enough about what that business process is behind the scenes to see whether or not that's really valuable. If those things come in and your task is to see what they say and write a, paragraph response and then that's it, you never talk to them again. I think that's one thing. If it's, that's the start of a 5-step process that takes them down a path, I think doing a task list, storing that in SharePoint, storing that in a planner board, storing that in some other mechanism where you can assign a task, have a next outcome, be doing something with that, automate the responses. I just think that's a way better approach.
And we do some of that in our business as well.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know if you want to give an example of that too, because one of the examples here was like, let's say your company has an admin department and all your administrative emails come into that, and most companies have that. So
so for us, this what we're doing right now is actually a really probably pretty good example of it for our business. So we have an integration with the when you guys submitted these questions for us to respond to, that all gets dumped into a channel within Slack, and so then that allows us to have that information ahead of time and actually kind of get ready for that before this session. It allows us to potentially reach out to someone and ask for further clarification. It allows us to do lots of things, but no one here monitors a shared mailbox to do that. To do that, we get that message in Slack, and then we create threaded messaging and have that discussion all within the Slack channel.
A topic-based channel.
The same thing happens for sales, right? Whenever we get sales messages that come in, when we get YouTube comments, when we get comments from our community, all of that integrates with the main platform that our team is responsible for and uses heavily. In the Microsoft world, it would be a team and a channel within a team. But that is how we manage it here, and something like that is what I would recommend to this person.
And I think to just paint the conceptual kind of picture, and I don't know this organization, I don't know their strategy behind everything, but most of the time when you have a shared mailbox, it's because you want multiple people to see a response. And in topic-based communication, when you set this up on platforms, that is part of the issue you're solving, because you can choose as many people as you want to join a channel that all get to see the automation that Matt's talking about.
And people can choose to just kind of peruse it, or they can choose to subscribe to it, or they can choose to, you can as a person, you can manage how you engage with that content.
Right.
Whereas email is just this big long list of stuff that I either read, and then if I mark it red, it was marked red for everyone.
I was about to say, that's like my favorite too,
you
got to make sure that in the shared mailbox that
it's shared,
if you read it, but you weren't supposed to be the one reading it, someone else was,
mark it unread.
if you're doing
Put it in a
that
folder.
stop, there are better ways to manage it, which, like you said, we'd recommend the topic-based channel and an automation setup that way. If you are on, who is that message from? I forget. If you are on and that was your question, let us know if you have follow-ups. Just welcoming everyone else. Stacy has a question here. Using what app with Slack?
So for us, we're using a forms integration from our public website. So it's an integration with ActiveCampaign to basically capture that information and then send it on to us in Slack. You could do that with MS Form. You could do that with lots of different things.
And we do that with MS Form with other clients,
It depends on the purpose. We use lots of different things. We don't, obviously we have a lot of people who are pretty tech savvy. We don't necessarily limit the scope of what we're doing there, so we use lots of different technologies in this case. That just happens to be the one that we're using for the purpose of office hours.
Yep. Yeah. All right, we've got a question from Dan here. He says, I am a system admin for a Power App model-driven app. For some reason, the Azure Active Directory is not available for lookups. Any ideas? I can share my screen if you would like.
Yeah, so Dan, we don't usually, sometimes we'll share our screen, but we don't really, there's risk of people showing stuff we don't want them to show. So we don't really do share screens
on YouTube.
From people who attend. But I have some more questions if you wouldn't mind coming off mute. It might be helpful. Are you really talking about the AAD lookup, the virtual table? Is that what you're asking about?
We're just allowed.
Okay.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, hey,
Did
Dan.
you look for something not called Azure Active Directory and called Entra ID because they just recently renamed it?
No, only because we have somebody else that developed another app in IT, and they had used the AAD. So that's what I was looking for. But no, I haven't tried the intro.
Yeah, I believe they've renamed everything, but the actual so the display names have all been updated to Entra ID, I believe. I believe that's what rolled out everywhere. I believe the internal name is still what it always has been, AAD users or something, whatever that name is. But if I had to guess, it's that it's named Entra and not Azure Active Directory.
Gotcha. Okay. Appreciate that very much. This has been driving me nuts, and our IT department too.
Not a problem. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. If you have a chance to check it while you're still on the call and you don't find it there, let me know and we can look at it a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. Microsoft naming. Gotta love it. All right. I think those were mainly our questions that were already submitted. Team in the room here, let me know if I'm missing any. But yeah, just looking out at the crowd joining here, let us know what your questions are, what you're working on, any business goals for 2024, anything you're excited about that's coming out in the Microsoft space. We are involved with the Loop preview right now. We're super excited with what they're doing with Loop. And like I said, we're definitely keeping tabs on what's going on with Planner as well. We see a lot of potential, I should say, in both of those. All right, we've got another question here. When I tell my colleagues that they can automate manual tasks, I often get a response, I don't trust a robot to do my job. Love it. That is a very honest response.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to have some thoughts on this. I'll let you respond first.
So I think my question would be, how does that make you feel when you hear that from someone? For me, I want robots to do the things that I don't want to have to do. So if I love doing whatever that is, that you said, hey, they can automate some of the manual tasks, and they go, I love that manual task. There's not much I can do. If you love doing that and that's what you love to do in your job, yeah, I can understand it. I can understand that that's not what you want. If it's something that is taking away from the actual work that I'm trying to get done and the value that I'm providing the business and the value that I feel myself about my job, you should want to trust it, especially if the organization is saying this is where you should be moving, right? If they're saying automation is the way forward. That's how we're going to meet our business goals. You should be looking for those things. Trying to convince somebody to trust a robot to do their job, and the way that is phrased it's a challenge from the get-go, because they're setting up the scenario where this piece of my job is so important, and it's my job, not the robot's job. It just creates all sorts of challenges. At least here, me, and for the businesses that we help and work with, we're looking for ways for them to accomplish their business goals, which may include making things easier by having tools that automate the process and make it better across the board. The only other thing I'll say about it is that chances are there are things that they're currently doing with that manual task that they aren't doing with the manual task that they should be doing, and they're not doing that because it's extra work, and the robot can do that automatically,
or they forget
and make it easy to do. So they're looking at it how a human looks at it as, how can I do this as easily as I can to meet the bare minimum. And many times when people are asking someone to do something, they will simplify a task because they don't want to impose on the person to do more or to do extra things. Whereas if you have a system and it's automated, they'll ask for it's the opposite problem. They're going to ask for the moon because it's just this system that's doing it. And oftentimes as a developer of the system, you have to kind of step it back and say, hey, wait a minute, what do you really need? Like, you don't need to ask for everything. But there's benefits across that medium. Yeah, there's benefits to both sides. And like I said, if somebody loves that part of their job and that's what they like to do, is like they see that as their identity for their job, there's not much you can do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Stacy's commenting too, just on the idea of changing culture. There was a phrase that we used to use. It's like, what's in it for me, or WIFM, like W. And I think, that's different, right? For every single person, maybe different for each team. But trying to find ways that you can demonstrate what automation can do. And maybe it's not just automation with tasks. Maybe it's some form of automation with an intranet where it makes it easier to remember everyone's birthday, or it makes it easier to remember calendar things that are coming up, or, in those moments where you have pain points where things are forgotten, or like Matt was saying, a task isn't done in a comprehensive manner because it's just stripped away to whatever the essentials are. It's like finding those and then demonstrating with examples. That's what we found has been really powerful with our clients.
Yeah, so I think the other powerful thing as someone who's maybe managing, maybe providing direction, maybe somewhere in an authority kind of or trusted advisor for someone, I would often focus on the things that they could be doing that are so much more fun.
Yes.
If they weren't doing that,
yes.
Right? Like, wouldn't the world be so much better if you had time to do these 5 things that you every week are frustrated because you can't get it done? I focus on that, right? Yep. Like, this is an outcome that I know you want. That is what you'll get if you let this other stuff go. If you take this other stuff and convert it into do it a different way, whatever that might be.
It's the opportunity cost.
And it's definitely part of that culture change, right? Like, how do you encourage people to change? Paint the picture of where they're going to be. That's one method that you can use to help with that process.
Because we don't have any other questions, I'm going to take it this direction of one of the words in Sachi's statement was trust, and not trusting a robot to do the job. AI obviously has a lot of questions around trust, where the data is going, who has access to it now if you're putting it into these different generators. We're actually coming out with a webinar pretty soon about Copilot, so we're not going to give spoilers away. But within Copilot, I know that's been a big conversation of, do we trust what is getting inputted now into the system? And I think Copilot has a lot of benefits there with the trust side of things. But what would your view on when people don't trust the robot or trust the system?
It's a question about where that trust is coming from. In the case of AI, the trust a lot of times comes in 2 factors. One is that the work product outcome is actually what you want. You see all the exclamation points on ChatGPT, Copilot, all of these things about it's an assistant. It's you need to check the work. You need to verify, right?
I even heard someone say it's called Copilot because it's a
'cause
co-pilot.
you're-
It's not autopilot.
You're
it's
still
like
driving,
you're
right?
still with it.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, we don't have autonomous vehicles really, not really autonomous because you're still supposed to be paying attention, right?
Right.
So the you know, that's one piece of it, and the other piece of it as well. If I type in all this information, or if I give it access to my private information, you know, that's IP. That's intellectual property for my business. That's personal to me. I don't want just everyone to have access to it. And so that's the other part of that trust, is that the data is going somewhere where they can trust that it's secured, managed, maintained, available, all of these things. I think the interesting thing about both of those things as it relates to not to Copilot or the AI suites, but a lot of the other tools in the automation space, which is kind of close to what Sachi was talking about. You know, these things are what you make them, right? When you build an automation into using Flow, it's the data's coming from an existing system that you already basically trust. It's coming from Outlook, or it's going into SharePoint, or it's going into SQL, or it's going into data. Like, these are systems that are already enterprise systems that you can trust to have the data. The thing that you may not be able to trust is your ability to build a tool on top of those things that would be what you want. But that's on you. It's on your people, you know.
And that can be a process, and there can be a lot of testing done within that.
And it can be a lot of growth, right? I mean, it's an area of, as you get better at that, the more things you can trust, the more things you can do.
Right.
It's a curve of, you know, when you don't know what you're doing, and you know, maybe you don't trust it quite as what you're doing quite as much, but as you gain confidence, you can kind of just keep that path going up to where you are able to
and the
really
manual side of things.
and the manual
goes
size,
down.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it takes that, you know, it's seeing is believing, right? Like, you know, when you see it happen, and when you can start to do it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, you're like, oh, yeah, I can trust this. This is working.
Right. It looks like Dan circled back. Microsoft Entra ID is indeed available to me and does the trick. Thank you. Awesome.
Perfect.
Glad that we were able to solve that one quickly. Awesome. Yeah, one other thing that kind of I wanted to jump in here and talk about that sort of, mirrors, I guess, what we're doing right now is chatting about some of these topics, some of these updates, things that are coming out in the Microsoft world. We actually have this thing called the Workplace, and it's our community where you can log in and get connected with people who are solving these types of problems or trying to change the culture at their organization, just like you probably are. So if you want any more information about that, I think we'll post a link. But like I said, it's called The Workplace, and it's just a community where we post things like our webinars, and we do hot seats with different members of the community. They can bring forward an issue that they're having or actually work through automations, different things like that. We've done a number of those. So if you're interested in joining our community, click the link. Mitch is dropping that in the chat, and there's a lot of information there. But like I said, it's really just a sounding board to discuss stuff that you're doing at your place of work. Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, we don't see any more questions in the chat, so I guess we'll wait a couple minutes and see if we get some more questions.
Yeah.
On YouTube, again, we're monitoring the YouTube chat. If you do have any questions from YouTube, feel free to post them there, and we'll talk about them there as well.
One thing I haven't mentioned yet that we could kind of discuss a little bit as well, if we were starting the conversation this morning, but we recently published a guidebook, which we're really proud about. It's all about internal communication, and I think that phrase and that word is sometimes lost in the shuffle of everything else, because of course you're communicating internally at your company, right?
Yep.
You have to talk to each other. But is there a best way to do that? We think there is. And so we put together this guidebook that breaks it down into the mindset you should have about internal communication, the principles that we sort of live by and live out in our projects. And then we actually have some helpful how-tos at the end. But we're thinking about creating some more guidebooks. So I'd love to hear from people if you're on these calls, what else you would love to see a guidebook written about, or a playbook is another way you could think about. Yeah, I'd be curious if people have responses.
And what outcomes you would like to get. So,
Yeah.
for example, on the communication guidebook, what when you hear that term, what's the outcome that you kind of expect to get from it? Because we have a lot of things that we want to talk about, things we want to say, but we want it to be really valuable and be able to be used by everyone.
And some of us who are newer to the team here, we did a podcast about this a little while back, me, Michaela, and Livy. We've all joined the team within the last 2 years. But I think one of the things that jumped out at us before joining Bulb, or as we were joining Bulb compared to where we were before, is how great the communication is here at our company. And we were like, man, if we could just bottle that up and ship it back to other, places we've been, or share it with other teams we've worked on, because we want everyone to know what it feels like to actually work at a workplace where everyone's literally on the same page. You feel like you actually know your coworkers, you know where you're going, you know what your goals are. Because it is such a great feeling when you are actually accomplishing things and you're all on the same page. It's just hard to distill that into how to create that, because each place is different, people are different, goals are different. This is our best effort at putting all that into a guidebook. So like I said, I think we did a pretty good job. It really breaks down into a few different categories. So check that out. Mitch posted the guidebook there too. And we're looking to write others. So if you have other topics that
feel free to reach out.
You're curious about. All right, so just resetting the room. Again, if you're joining us on YouTube, feel free to post questions in the chat. And if you're joining us on Teams, you can also post in the chat and we can bring you off mute to have more of a conversation. Maybe we'll take a pause for a few minutes and see if anyone posts anything. All right, we're back. We got a question on YouTube, so I'm going to read that out for those on the teams. Hi, I am a digital workplace specialist at my current workplace and work to find digital solutions to traditional problems, mostly using Microsoft platforms. Awesome. I don't have an IT degree. Would you recommend I go back and get one? I know Matt's going to have some thoughts.
I think my question would be, I think this is a complicated question. I think experience trumps lots of things in your area and in your, if you look at the market where you're trying to get employment, if you see a lot of job opportunities that say you need a degree, and specifically an IT degree, it might be something to consider. If you're not seeing that, I don't think it's required. If you don't have a degree at all, I think that can be something that employers could look at. But generally speaking, I know for us in particular, when we hire, we look more at what your experience is, what you're capable of, what you currently are able to do. At the same time, there's lots of government organizations, large organizations. They have a rule about, having a degree of some sort. Many of those are not specific to the type. So, we have people who are biomedical engineers that have spent time doing IT and they have a degree. That's okay. Many of them don't say, oh, you have to have an an IS degree or a CS degree or an IT specific degree. But again, it really comes down to the types of jobs that you're looking for, and where you want to be. It also would matter to me, what you want to be doing. Digital workplace specialist, trying to do digital solutions and to traditional problems, that talks to me about something that you are never going to learn in a traditional IT program. Most IT degrees are not going to talk to you about that. They're going to talk to you a lot about system management, higher level IT things. If that is not something that you're being asked to do within your job, or what you want to be doing in your job, I don't know that it's really that valuable. So there's a follow-up comment. Currently not too limited in job opportunities, live in South Africa. Asking more from a competency perspective. So I don't think that there's that much that you're going to get from doing a IT-focused degree from a competency perspective. You're going to get more technical understanding, a broader technical understanding, which has a benefit, but I don't think it's really going to be that valuable for what you're doing, what you've said that you're doing currently. And assuming that's what you want to be doing, it's not, you can learn those same things by, educating yourself in other ways. And you don't need a traditional degreed program to learn that.
Yeah, and I would just say, echoing what you said about the experience, it sounds like you're doing most of your work, you were saying mostly in the Microsoft platforms. I mean, one of the things we've talked about even just today is how often all of these things change. And so there's a degree, too, of just staying up with what's actually going on and what's changing and all of that. That can be really powerful, and I think employers are definitely looking for that. I know at our company we're always looking for people who are willing to adapt and learn and continue to be forever a learner. But yeah, sounds like a good space to be in.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the question. Looks like Dan had to run, but he was saying many thanks for your help today. You're welcome, Dan. Great. Well, any other questions or comments? We'd love to hear if you guys are working on any projects or have any goals in the next couple months, and kind of hearing what obstacles have come up. What's stopping you from getting things done. Sachi, you already mentioned some of the culture, hesitation to change or hesitation to trusting the different tools and technology that you have available and resources. But yeah, let us know if there's any other topics like that we could speak to. Give everyone a minute here. All right. This is a comment from Sachi, I like this. The internet is flooded with Excel articles and videos. I like that Bulb doesn't push Excel for everything. Oh, man, Mike would Love that
The
comment.
I've seen a huge influx of videos about Copilot with Excel. That is like everybody is talking about how Excel is dead or has changed significantly or whatever with Copilot. So I know exactly what you're talking about. There's lots and lots of videos about that. Yeah, Excel is it is not a solution for everything or very much. We find ourselves going more for Power BI and for, SharePoint and Excel is just an intermediary, a viewing tool. And that's just the way that we approach it. So,
But we came from humble beginnings. We used to run our business.
we ran our entire business on Excel.
And have,
when we
obviously
first
found
started out,
other-
that was everything. Like we ran everything out of that Excel workbook, and it worked pretty well for us for quite a long time. But it's when it was just 2 people, 3 people, it's very different, and the cost benefit analysis is very different than I know businesses that are running hundreds of thousands of dollars of business, millions of dollars of business out of Excel workbooks, and that's doesn't seem very well. It doesn't just seem. It is crazy. It's dumb.
I'm going to post this blog from Mike from last year. I really liked this one. Excel, the sneaky trap that's costing you time and money.
My favorite Excel story is when we got contacted by a customer who had a problem because they were using Excel, either Excel or I think it was Excel, to run a particular project with a government vendor or government customer, and the person who was running it either quit or got fired, but they were the only one that knew the password protected info for that Excel file.
No.
And so they're like, what do we do? How do we break into it? And it's like, well, I mean, that's like the simple thing is like, how do you get access to the rest of it? The bigger question is how you stop doing this going forward, because
what if the next person
is going to put a new password on it?
Right.
And it's just an example of the problem, right?
Yeah.
No backups, no previous versions,
and all that information can just die. Yeah. It's trapped in there. Okay, we've got another question. Let's see this one. I currently create the apps from a SharePoint list, and all users in the organization can use them. I would like to use Dataverse instead of lists. Would I need a license for each user in that case?
That's a great question. The simple answer is yes. So to use Dataverse, every user who interacts with Dataverse must have a license. There is an interesting concept that we have talked about, or we're going to be talking about even more, related to that licensing conversation. A lot of people look at the per user licensing, and the licensing on it is really confusing, quite frankly. If your application is used by everyone in your organization every day, every month, whatever that might be, then yeah, there's no way 2 ways about it. You have to pay for the license. Everybody's got to have a license. It's just the way it is. There is a cheaper license that would be a per app, per user license, which is significantly cheaper than the traditional, what they call the premium license today. So if you're looking at it and going, oh my goodness, it's $30 a person or $20 a person or whatever it is for the premium license, that's not the only license available. So that would be the first thing I would say. The second thing is you can also do what's called consumption-based licensing, which is more expensive per user. So if you know that you're going to have 100 people accessing it, I wouldn't use the consumption-based licensing or the pay-as-you-go, POGO licensing. But if you have this scenario where like your apps they're used by everyone, if that used means, well, it's a help desk app and we get 20 people who request help every month out of 200 people in the organization, you really don't need a license for everybody. You just need a license for the 20 people that use it that month. It can be very economical to set up that pay-as-you-go licensing to do that as well. So the answer is yes, you have to have a license. The clarification is there's lots of ways to have that license not cost a ton. The only other clarification that I'll make is that You can do things within a Teams environment, which does not require licensing in the same way. However, it has a ton of limitations. And if you see that out there, I would generally speaking kind of recommend against going that way to start with, just because if you're talking about your apps being used by everyone in your organization, you're not likely to be able to live within the constraints of just that Teams environment licensing. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive answer, and it sounds like you can kind of hack it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can
You need
start
to get
out small and
strategic.
grow as you need to.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Absolutely. Great. Well, keep the questions coming. We're here for another 10 minutes and happy to chat. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have any other questions for you. I'm sure I do. But what I really want to do is talk about Copilot, since we're getting ready for
We
that
can't talk
webinar.
about
But
that
I
yet.
know it's definitely
We don't want to spoil it.
spoil the whole thing. But we definitely have been playing around with Copilot a lot and testing out, some of the ways in which it can make your life easier. It can make just you more productive, more efficient.
Trying to decide if it's worth it for everybody. Trying to decide who.
Trying to decide if we trust the robot of it.
Yeah.
Starting to figure us out and starting to learn our habits.
Yeah.
But overall, I have found Copilot to be very helpful. You have to remember that it is the Copilot. It's not autopilot. You definitely does make mistakes and doesn't capture things perfectly. But what it does capture is really powerful, and we're excited to share how we're using it in our organization, how it makes, especially as a project manager's life easier, because you're trying to organize meetings, you're trying to take notes, you're trying to write down action items, and wherever it can fit and help with that process flow, it just makes things go much smoother. So I'll be talking to that on the webinar as well.
Yep.
It's coming up at the end of March. Yeah. Post any other questions you have. I guess we'll go on music break for a minute.
For just a minute.
Cool. Oh, Stacy's typing. Drum roll for Stacy's. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I see a comment on YouTube too. Awesome. Thanks. Definitely want to be doing this as a specialist or even as a consultant. Love your content. Thanks so much. Love it.
End of the month webinar. Looking forward to the Copilot webinar.
Wow, I'm really talking it up.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Raising the bar for what we have to do.
Yeah. No, it really is. It's a topic that I think we're grappling with even in our business. Like Matt said, we were trying to decide if we want to pay for Copilot for all of our team members or who it makes most sense for. So we'll be sharing some of our recommendations around that and what we've seen work for us, and what we're kind of recommending for different size businesses as well. Yeah. All right. Like I said, April 10th, next week, bring your coworkers, talk through things together, collaborate with them on our office hours. And Mitch posted a little link there too. Feel free to type in, what we helped you with today. We're always here to answer questions and comments on our YouTube videos. If you have questions about anything that we post, definitely comment. Cool. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap today up. Doesn't seem like anyone else has a ton more questions. Thanks for coming, Stacy. We really appreciated your questions and your engagement. So thanks, everyone that tuned in today. And like I said, April 10th, next month. It's usually the first Wednesday of every month, but next week we'll do the second. And yeah, thanks for your time today, Matt.
Yeah.
It's great to hear what you're all working on and what we could help with. So see you next time.
Bye, everybody.